The time 6:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here is the news edited by Lakshman Fonseca and read by Tilani Pires. A digital wallet to be introduced to all Sri Lankans, Minister Nama Rajapaksa says. The examinations department is ready to provide relief for the grade 5 students if they were treated unfairly at the examination. The Presidential Task Force for One Country, One Law commenced public consultations in the southern province. The CB has warned that it may be compelled to enforce power cuts. International flights would commence from the Colombo International Airport, Ratmalana, shortly. And on international news, the Taliban envoys arrive in Oslo for aid talks. The Minister Nama Rajapaksa says a digital wallet will be introduced to all Sri Lankans. He said plans are afoot to provide the facility after the issuance of the digital national identity card. The minister said it would allow citizens to keep their essential personal documents, including passports, birth certificates, marriage certificates and exam certificates, in a digital wallet. He added it can be opened from their mobile phones and present them at any time. The minister pointed out that the project is expected to be completed within 30 months. He made these remarks speaking at the launch of the Lanka QR code introduced by the Central Bank for mobile payments in Gampha yesterday. Speaking at the event, Tourism Minister Prasanna Ranatunga said the government is also to introduce the Lanka QR code to the tourism industry as well. The Commissioner General of Examinations, LMD Dharmasena, says the department is ready to provide relief for the grade 5 students if they were treated unfairly at the examination. The grade 5 scholarship examination was held yesterday under strict health regulations at 2,936 examination centres across the island. He said few unlawful incidents were recorded from 3 or 4 exam centres. 3 groups have now launched investigations over the issues under the instructions of the Minister of Education and Secretary to the Ministry, he added. Accordingly, one investigation will be headed by the Zonal Director of Education and the other by the Provincial Director of Education in the relevant area. Another investigation will also be launched by a Special Investigation Committee appointed by the Ministry. At a media briefing held in Colombo today, the Commissioner General of Examinations also said paper correction process of the exam will commence at the end of this month. The Presidential Task Force of One Country, One Law had commenced public consultations in the southern province yesterday. It was conducted at the Divisional Secretariat Office. Dikwala religious leaders, NGOs, professionals and the general public had presented their views and opinions before the Task Force Committee. Our correspondent said some have also provided their views in written form. Before the committee, Venerable Paraduwe Jinaratananayaka Thera said, still the application of law and order is biased and slanting. The Thera, providing some examples, explained that the law is amended over the issues such as economic conditions and the power of the offenders. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force, Venerable Galagodatte Nyanasar Thera, thanked the people who expressed their views and said that the task force would commit to present a set of proposals that is fair and just. The Thera said it will be accepted by all communities. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The CEB has warned that it may be compelled to enforce power cuts from the day after tomorrow. The CEB said that at present there is sufficient fuel to operate the power plants in the Colombo harbour till Monday to generate electricity. It said the water levels of the reservoirs have also been reduced due to the prevailing drought, and it has resulted negatively for power generation from the hydropower stations. The CB said Sapugaskanda power plant is not operating now due to the fuel shortage, and it provides 108 megawatts for the national grid normally. The CB said that it will make a formal announcement on the duration of the power cuts after reviewing the situation. International flights would commence from Colombo International Airport, Ratmalana, shortly. It is to be initiated on the 29th of January. The State Minister of Aviation and Export Zones Development, D.V. Chanaka, said flights from South India, Malay and Bangladesh will land and take off from Ratmalana Airport. It was revealed during a discussion on the development of the Ratmalana Airport held at the State Ministry of Aviation recently. The Colombo International Airport, Ratmalana, was established in 1938. The State Minister said regional and international flights were not operational from there due to the commencement of flights from Katunayake International Airport in 1968. He also said steps have already been taken to launch new regional international flights using the resources available at the Ratmalana Airport. 2 airlines have already agreed to launch regional international flights based on India and the Maldives. The minister said talks were underway with several other airlines and the discussions were optimistic. That ends the local news for now.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhaloka Vedamahatma.
The COVID-19 impact measures disrupted incoming generation activities and exacerbated food prices increases in the markets. The most affected are people who rely on unstable income sources such as small traders, street vendors and casual workers. Professor of Applied Economics of the University of Colombo, H.D. Karunaratne, says the situation is common to most of all the counties in the world, and Sri Lanka is also a shareholder of the situation. Speaking at the SLBC program this morning, he said, this deteriorating economic situation has adversely affected the food security and nutrition situation in Sri Lanka too. He added Sri Lankan farmers are addicted to use imported chemical fertilizer, which are now excluded by many developed countries. That was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhaloka Vedamahatma.
On Watchlight this evening, new research has shown a booster dose of a coronavirus vaccine is 90% effective in preventing hospitalization due to infection with the Omicron variant. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention says released its study on Friday on the effectiveness of booster shots of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines based on data from medical institutions across the country. It says that 2 doses of the vaccine were 81% effective against hospitalization after 6 months when the Delta variant was surging and 57% when the Omicron variant became dominant. It added unvaccinated people aged between 50 and 64 are 44 times more likely to be hospitalized for COVID-19 compared to fully vaccinated and boosted individuals. The figure rose to 49 times among those aged 65 or older. That came to you in Watchlight. Coming up, World News. World News headlines first. Taliban envoys arrive in Oslo for aid talks. Intense fighting in Syria after IS fighters tried to break inmates out of a prison. Plume reached halfway to space from the Tonga volcano, scientists say. A Taliban delegation landed in Oslo last evening for 3 days of meetings with the Western officials. The talk, scheduled to run until Tuesday, will mark the Taliban's first meeting with Western diplomats in Europe since the group seized power in Afghanistan in August last year. An all-male 15-member delegation arrived on a plane organized by the Norwegian government, according to a Taliban spokesman. The parties are due to discuss human rights and humanitarian aid for Afghans during their talks. The hardline militants will meet Norwegian and European Union officials as well as representatives from the UK, France, Germany, Italy and the US. The Taliban are also expected to meet Afghans living in the EU, including female leaders and journalists. Intense fighting is taking place in northeastern Syria after IS fighters tried to break inmates out of a Kurdish-run prison. Kurdish-led forces backed by US airstrikes have been battling militants in the city of Hasaka since Thursday. The assault on Govran prison is one of the group's most ambitious since its defeat in Syria nearly 3 years ago. The overcrowded site houses 3,500 suspected IS members, including some of its leaders, the monitoring group says. Hundreds of jihadists have been recaptured since the breakout, but some are still on the run. The Syrian Observatory of Human Rights said Kurdish security forces have surrounded the prison and are fighting for control of nearby neighborhoods. Residents have been fleeing their homes, the BBC reported. An indicator of the great power of last Saturday's volcanic eruption in Tonga is the height reached by its plume. UK scientists examining weather satellite data calculate it to be around 55 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Dr. Simon Proud from RAL Space said that this was the most powerful eruption in the second half of the 20th century, came from Mount Pinatubo in 1991. Its flume is thought to have climbed to roughly 40 kilometers. However, it's possible today's more accurate satellites would have given a higher altitude for the Philippines event, cautioned Dr. Proud, who is affiliated to the UK National Centre for Earth Observation. Back to the world news headlines. Taliban envoys arrive in Oslo for aid talks. Intense fighting in Syria after IS fighters tried to break inmates out of a prison. Plume reached halfway to space from the Tonga volcano, scientists say. That ends world news.
Development News is brought to you by Let's take coal out of the coconut tree and make the island thriving and prosperous. Call our hotline 1928. WhatsApp 070 400 1928.
Continuing with development news, the Batticaloa International Airport will be redeveloped as a fully fledged domestic airport. Tourism and Civil Aviation Minister Prasanna Ranatunga says a tripartite agreement will be signed by the airport and Aviation Services Private Limited, Civil Aviation Authority and Sri Lanka Air Force to prepare a suitable plan for this purpose and to implement it. A special program will also be implemented to identify commercial investment opportunities inside the airport, focusing attention on other investment opportunities relating to the domestic aviation industry, the minister said. That came to you in Development News.
Development News was brought to you by the coconut tree is well grown in almost all the parts of the island. It is an exceptional source of extra income. The shell, the husk and almost all the parts of the coconut tree makes you money, providing you with an excellent extra source of income. It will also help to nourish the economy of the country. You will be guided with all necessary informations regarding the coconut cultivation, with the novel cultivation techniques and all other related and upgraded informations by the Coconut Research Institute, Lunavilla. Call our hotline 1928. WhatsApp 070 400 1928.
Coming up, sports news. England's third and final 2020 against Australia in the Women's Ashes was abandoned without a ball being bowled because of rain in Adelaide. Australia now lead the multi-format series 4-2 at each side, take 1 point. The hosts won the first T20 by 9 wickets before the second T20 was also abandoned because of rain. The two sides next face each other in a one-off test from the 27th to the 30th of January in Canberra, with 4 points on offer for the winner. Victory for Australia in the test will guarantee the holders retain the Ashes, as England would only be able to secure an 8-8 draw at best. The 3 one-day internationals that follow the test are worth 2 points each. The 4-day test at the Manuka Oval starts at 2300 GMT on the 26th of January. Since the first multi-format series in 2013, 3 of the 5 tests have been drawn, with England and Australia winning 1 each. That ends sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The London Stock Exchange Group Foundation has provided 13.6 million rupees to financially assist and provide meaningful employment to disabled women in northern Sri Lanka. The initiative was in partnership with UK-based charity Leonard Cheshire. The Leonard Cheshire is an international charity that supports people with disabilities through inclusive education, employment and community programs. That came to you in Business News.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
We move on with economic news. The high prices of vegetables during the Christmas season and thereafter are gradually decreasing. It is reported the scarcity of vegetables resulted with high prices in the past 2 months. However, farmers were turning back to cultivation even without chemical fertilizer. Our correspondent says, however, farmers say they were paying excessive amounts for fertilizer sold by traders expecting high returns. They said some farmers had to pay 9,500 rupees for a 50-kilo bag of chemical fertilizer, which was earlier made available at a subsidized rate of 1,500 rupees. That was economic news. The weather report. Mainly dry weather will continue to prevail over most parts of the island. Fairly cold weather can be expected during the early hours, and there is a possibility of ground frost at some places in the Nuwara district during the early hours of the morning. Misty conditions can also be expected at some places in the western, central, Sabaragamuwa, north central and Uva provinces and in Kurunegala, Galle, Mathura districts during the morning. Mainly fair weather will prevail over the sea areas around the island. That was the weather report. And now to end this news broadcast, the main points once again. A digital wallet to be introduced to all Sri Lankans, Minister Namal Rajapaksa says. The examinations department is ready to provide relief for the grade 5 students if they were treated unfairly at the examination. The Presidential Task Force for One Country, One Law commenced public consultations in the southern province. The CB has warned that it may be compelled to enforce power cuts. International flights would commence from the Colombo International Airport, Ratmalana, shortly. And on international news, the Taliban envoys arrive in Oslo for aid talks. That ends this news broadcast.